It's a big one down in South London today for the Foxes. Roy Hodgson is back in the dugout for the Eagles, facing a Leicester side who are unbeaten in 7 against Palace. Here's all of today's all-important team news. And starting in goal again from a Leicester City point of view is Daniel Everson. Made his Premier League debut, his first start, didn't he, against Brentford a couple of weeks ago. He retains his spot in goal. There's a return for Victor Christiansen, his first minutes since the defeat to Blackburn in the FA Cup. Wout Faes and Harry Souttar in central defence with Timothy Castagna at right back. It's the familiar 4-2-3-1 formation. Dewsbury Hall and Wilfred Ndidi in the holding positions, with Barnes, Maddison and Tete supporting lone striker Patson Daka. On the bench for the Foxes, Danny Ward, Kaglau Soyuncu, Luke Thomas, Daniel Amati, Papi Mendy, Buba Samare, Ricardo, Jamie Vardy and Kelechi Iheanacho. From a home side point of view, this is Roy Hodgson's first starting 11 in his second spell in charge of Palace. Vicente Guaita in goal. It's a back four of Mitchell, Guehi, Anderson and Ward. It's a similar formation, we think, to Leicester City, with Schlupp and Decore in midfield. Zaha, the danger man, of course. He's got a fantastic record against Leicester. Eberiche Eze and Elise also in behind Hodgson Edouard. So that's all of today's team news. So do welcome along to Matchday Live here on LCFC TV ahead of what could be, hopefully, a very big and important day for Leicester City. Matty Fryatt and Jerry Taggart are with me today. Good afternoon to the both of you on, as we said, what hopefully will be a really, really good day today.
Yeah, good to be back. I do miss it when it's international week. It's always, I much prefer the domestic football, so it's glad to be back and looking forward to it.
Yes, and welcome back, Jerry, off the international break as well. It's fantastic to be back again, and fingers crossed for a positive result today.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. As Matt says, great to be back for the bread and butter. Yeah, big game again today, isn't it? Obviously, Palace with a new manager. Well, an old new manager, should we say, in the dugout. So a big game. The squad's looking healthier by the minute, which is really good to see. So yeah, really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, we'll dissect that team news very shortly. We've got plenty to come here on Matchday Live this afternoon. Let's take a quick look at what we've got coming up in the next hour or so as we build up to kick-off with our commentary team of Niall McCorn and Matt Elliott down in London. We'll take a look back at the game against Brentford. It was only 2 weeks ago. It feels like a lot longer than that, doesn't it? We'll hear from Ricardo Pereira as well. He's been previewing this game with Crystal Palace and also looking back at the last month in general. And there'll be some classic goals as well scored against Crystal Palace, including that stunner from Christian Fuchs. Jerry, obviously, as we've been discussing, very important day for Leicester, and we're feeling positive, aren't we, today? We feel like Leicester can certainly get something down against Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I think it's one of those teams, after the result, or the draw, should I say, against Brentford, there was a lot of confidence taken from that game, especially in the second half. A lot of players have been on international duty. James Maddison starring, of course, against Ukraine. So you're thinking that the players are going into this game with a good degree of confidence. And as I've just mentioned, Dan, the squad size is looking a little bit healthier than it has been over the last few weeks. So that's competition for places. So yeah, something to really look forward to today.
Yeah, I think they can build on it, particularly that result against Brentford. I don't think Brentford did too much in the game from watching from it. It was a solid defensive performance. The boys showed a lot of character, and then that quality in the second half. It'd be more the same again today in terms of try and get solid. I know there's a few changes. Good to see players coming back into the fold, but obviously selection decisions for Brendan in terms of Christiansen back in, Castagna, Pereira. Is it one of them? I thought last time out Pereira, it was probably his best showing since he's come back from injury. Wilfred Ndidi looked more like himself, breaking up play, but again the team have got to be really solid. Didn't offer too many chances to Brentford, a little bit unfortunate to concede the goal, and second half performance more than deserved a point, so they'll go into it full of confidence.
Go on, Jerry.
I was just going to add on the back. I think that's probably only surprise for me was Ricardo Pereira, being left on the bench today. Again, he looked somewhat back to his best, or showed glimpses of that anyway. So a minor surprise, but really good to have Christensen back in the side.
How important Victor Christensen is that?
Oh, massive. As much as Castagna, it just adds more balance to the team in terms of being a left footer out on the left hand side. And you're seeing them performances since he's come into Leicester, signed in obviously the January, tenacious, and it's a tight pitch, so he can get right on the front foot, that front foot defending, and he can cause problems between himself and Barnes on that left hand side against Elise and Ward. Barnes has got fanciest chances today, 33-year-old Joel Ward, so that could be a really defining option on that left hand side.
You've been impressed, Jerry, haven't you, with Victor Christensen since his arrival, of course, in January?
Yeah, overall, I have to say, there's been one or two instances where he's struggled slightly in certain instances, but that's to be expected. He's a 20-year-old kid. He's new to the Premier League, so he's still finding his feet somewhat, Dan. But I think the signs are good. The raw materials that he carries with him, will inevitably help Leicester. I've no doubt about that. And today is one of those days where they're going to have to be pretty solid defensively. And that is probably one of his best attributes.
Do you think on that though, Jerry, in terms of Christensen, he's going to be more on the front foot, stop someone like Elise playing a bit more than maybe Castagna, a little bit more conservative? I know Castagna's experienced, but on the opposite side, do you think that's going to be a bit more pressing in terms of what Christensen can do?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as I've mentioned, I think defensively is probably his best attribute, although he does love to get forward. But I think, you've got to look at the league table, Matty, and Leicester have to realise sooner or later that, the best way to get out of this is being a little bit pragmatic. That's the way Crystal Palace will play today. They'll be pragmatic. So Leicester have to probably think slightly differently about the way they start approaching the rest of these games in the running.
It's a fascinating point that Jerry makes there, because you look at Palace, they haven't conceded a huge amount of goals. They've just really struggled scoring. So Roy Hodgson's aim is to come in and usually a new manager with a team struggling at the bottom, they think we need to shore the defence up. It's probably not the case.
No, you'd like to merge both teams. Obviously Leicester scoring capabilities and what Palace have shown defensively, because they have been solid at the back. It's just they haven't been clinical when the chances have come the way and goals have been not too forthcoming. But at the same time, Hodgson is the type of manager who's defensive, so they've already got a decent setup about them. It's just they haven't really shown the goals, or the individual players haven't had their moments during the course of the season. Even though they're a decent team, they've just been on a winless run and decided to make a change, which more often than that, unfortunately, you get a boost from that new manager coming in and that could lift the players. But I'm sure they'll be organised, but Leicester also want to be on the front foot themselves and show what they can do and have them little moments we saw against Brentford and pose their threats going forward. Always think Leicester can score, just whether they can get a clean sheet.
Dan, that's a good point. Just coming in the back of that, what Matty's saying, Leicester have conceded the first goal in the 10 games since the World Cup break. They've conceded the first goal in a game. So it's vitally important that, they concentrate on a clean sheet today and don't give Palace, any joy whatsoever. If they're going to score, they have to make them work really hard for it.
It's another trip down to London for the Blue Army, of course, this afternoon, just as it was a couple of weeks ago when they faced Brentford. As Jerry mentioned, they conceded first, but they battled hard to get a point.
And here come the two teams out of the tunnel, and the G-Tech Stadium rises for Brentford and Leicester City. Spring is in the air, and things are getting serious in the Premier League. And it's Barnes who rides the challenge and crosses in. No, he's gone for goal with his right foot, and it's whizzed just past David Raya's left-hand post. Tete rolls it back to Ricardo. Ricardo swings it in. Daka's up, just wide. Well, that was a chance of Patson Daka. Ricardo swings it into the box. Daka's header. Pinnock blocked it, came back to Daka, who shoots over the bar from close range. Well, he reacted quickest, and Patson Daka thinks that perhaps he should have scored there. Henry on the edge of the box, who dinks it back towards Mbeumo. Flag stays down, and Mbeumo's ball into the penalty area, comes back again, and it's into the back of the net through Matthias Jensen. Oh, that was scrappy. Went through a sea of bodies and found its way beyond Daniel Everson. Clips a lovely ball into Maddison, and Maddison releases Barnes. Chance here for Barnes. Brilliant goal for Leicester City. Barnes has clipped it over David Raya. That was class from front to back. Dewsbury Hall, Maddison and Barnes. What a good challenge from Dewsbury Hall, and the ball went to Kelechi Iheanacho, and the referee blew his whistle. And Leicester are in a great position, but the reason that he's blown his whistle is because he is showing a red card, I think. And that's the final whistle, and this feels like a big point for Leicester City. Not many have come to the G-Tech this season and have got much.
A point last time out on the road for the Foxes. They travel again today in the Premier League. A reminder for you, if you're only just joining us, the team news from a Leicester point of view. Victor Christensen returns at the back, at left back, of course. Wout Faes back as well after his red card. The interesting point, Matty, again, is Patson Daka is preferred up front as the lone striker?
Yeah, he is. I thought last time he worked well. He had a few opportunities, and today I'm surprised, in fact, that possibly Iheanacho could have come into the team just with more of his link-up play. Palace, tight pitch, not a lot of space, but you after Patson Daka, can he stretch the game? Can he get Palace's back line deep and then let Maddison play in them pockets, find those spaces? But again, trusted him from the week before against Chelsea, scoring his goal and going with him again. So now working hard, can he stretch that defence and make runs in behind?
Yeah, it's an important role for him, Jerry, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, overall, I think Matty's nailed it there with stretching the game in behind. You've seen the goal that Leicester scored against Brentford, and it was although beautiful pass from James Maddison to find Harvey Barnes. It was that stretching the game in behind. Kelechi Iheanacho invariably likes to come short. And so I think having Patson Daka on from the start will enable Leicester, with the likes of Barnes and Daka, to stretch the game. That will hopefully enable space for Maddison to get on the ball. And then as the game goes on, if things aren't quite going your way, or you think, the tactics sort of change, and that's when you bring either, Kelechi on or Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, obviously, Iheanacho, impact player. At the same time, sometimes when he starts, he doesn't always have quite the same impact as he does when coming off the bench. So that's a consideration. You just would like to stretch the game because Palace's pitch is that condensed. It's hard to find space, but then if Daka, Barnes are stretching the game, it finds them holes where Maddison's so effective in, and we saw against Brentford where he gets on that half turn, slides it in, that run from Barnes, and that'll be an area where Leicester will look to exploit, especially on the inside award.
Because they're so compact, Dan, as well, Palace, like you said, and they're going to be even more compact today under Roy Hodgson. Then it's important that Leicester try and stretch the midfield and the back line so those gaps appear for the likes of Maddison to get some joy. So it's really, really important that, the likes of Daka, as I said before, and Barnes, that's got to be the first thought in their mind.
It goes without saying, James Maddison is vital, isn't he, to this team, and he makes them tick. And as you said against Brentford, that's exactly what happened.
It's just the quality he possesses, obviously the awareness, the touch, the goals he gets, the assists he gets. He's got them all in numbers. Going away with England would have given him a huge lift again, but he's deserved that. And he's shown to everyone how he can perform on an international stage, as well as how vital he is for Leicester. And Brentford was, I wouldn't say it was his best of games, but at the same time, it was the difference, that weight of pass. It was just the highest of quality. It was like, go on Barnes, go and finish, Harvey, go and finish it first time. And so was the case, but it's that one moment. Can he get that one moment? And that's all he needs. But against Palace, it's going to be reduced spaces, very tight. I always found it playing against them a hostile atmosphere as well. And you have to earn your right to play. And James Maddison's bright enough, intelligent enough to wait for their moments. It might not open up to start with, but as the game advances, he'll just find them pockets, and that's all he needs, that one moment. Key pass will get that strike away.
Yeah, Dan, again, with James Maddison in the team, you're thinking this game's going to hinge on one or two moments. If you look at the stats, the goals for and against stats for both teams, and realistically, you're going to say this is going to be a pretty tight game. And so, but having James Maddison on the pitch, like he did against Brentford, then you know that at any given moment, he's got that quality to play a defence-splitting pass and put someone through in on goal.
It's a big weekend in general for Leicester City, not just the men's side today, but tomorrow LCFC women are in action here at King Power Stadium. They face Reading. It's a really big game as they're looking to avoid relegation themselves. This was against Reading in the Women's FA Cup back in January. It was a fascinating game. It finished 2-2. Went to penalties. Reading eventually won on penalties, so Leicester hopefully tomorrow will be looking to take a little bit of revenge for that defeat. You can follow all the action on a special Matchday live programme, live here from King Power Stadium from 2:30. We're also on for half an hour at full time as well, so do join us for that tomorrow if you can't indeed get down here to King Power Stadium for that women's game. Really huge game for them. Let's concentrate though back on today's game and hear from Ricardo Pereira, who's been looking back on this last month and also previewing the game with Palace today.
Obviously there's been the international break. Some have gone away, some have stayed at Seagrave looking ahead to this Crystal Palace game. How important was that point, do you think, a couple of weeks ago against Brentford?
It was good to break the momentum. I think we did a lot of things that were good in the previous games, but then you look to the results and you don't have points from that. It was a difficult game against a very good side. They are doing a good season. We had some periods in the game that we struggled a little bit, but we had our bits that we were better on the game, and I would say that point was fair.
Because you did show a lot of fight and a lot of resilience in the game, because there's been a number of times this season where obviously you've conceded first and not been able to come back into the game, but you're able to do so this time, and that must give this confidence going into this final run of games.
Yeah, of course. Now with the break we had some time to regroup, to keep the work and keep doing what we are doing. I think we are doing a lot of things well. Some bits that are not so good that are costing us points, and we need to be more clinical in that small points to get the wins.
Has that added to the frustration, because I think collectively as a group you have thought that performances have been okay and you've maybe not got the rub of the green, the little bit of luck in games when maybe another season you will have done?
Yeah, for sure. It's hard when you are on this kind of results that you play but you don't win, but at the same time I don't see anyone giving up. I see everyone working, doing their best to change things, and for sure we will be rewarded, and I hope it's already on Saturday.
Absolutely, hopefully it happens on Saturday against a team with a new manager who's obviously managed them before, so that adds an extra dynamic into the game and probably the atmosphere as well.
Yeah, because someone who knows the house, someone, I would say maybe the majority of players know the coach, and like you said, will change the dynamic and will give maybe a little bit of a boost for them, for the confidence and to do better, and we have to be ready for that.
Because they have some dangerous players, and particularly at home with that atmosphere, as you say, can be fairly intimidating and difficult to play in.
Yeah, we played that before. We know what to expect, and yeah, we need to be careful.
Just finally, from a personal point of view, we spoke to you before, I think the Blackburn game in the FA Cup about a month ago, and that was your first start back. Obviously now you've had a few games, you've had a few 90 minutes. How are you feeling in yourself?
Good. Better than I expected. I started to play that game and then I played, 3-4 games, and each game I was feeling better and better. And I just hope it keeps going like this and keep doing even better.
Ricardo Pereira there speaking ahead of this game with Crystal Palace. A reminder, if you are just joining us, he is on the bench today. Jerry, are you surprised about that?
Yeah, a little bit. Not overly, but yeah, a little bit. As I said, I thought we'd seen glimpses of him. You've just seen a clip there of him putting the ball into the box and Daka getting a header at the near post. So that's the quality that he brings, Ricardo Pereira. So I don't know whether or not Brendan's just decided to take him out for this game, even though he's still on the bench, and there's a good possibility that he could come on later in the game. Does Brendan want to be a bit more defensively solid? Does he need more height in the team? Is that why Castagna and Christensen, more aggression in the air? But yeah, I think definitely, as far as Ricardo, he's showing glimpses of being back to his best.
Yeah, I'd say the last game, he can feel unfortunate not to be obviously starting today, because I thought it showed the signs of what it was before his injury, and obviously it's great to have him back, but I thought against Brentford, the threat that Henry offered, he coped well with it. Communication wasn't always there between himself and Tete, so it'll be an interesting dynamic today in terms of the communication between Castagna and Tete, because that's a big part of the performance in terms of got to protect, obviously, the threat of Zaha, really dangerous player, and against Castagna, he's got to double up with Tete, he's got to come back, and they've got to work as a pair because their biggest threat is obviously Zaha. He's got a great record against Leicester. So it's an area where I thought Pereira did really well in terms of Brentford. He grew into the game and can feel a little bit hard done by not getting the pick. But I'd also get it from Brendan's perspective, because Castagna's played most of the games this season and obviously moving from the left side back into the right side. So I sort of get it, and you've got to understand that he hasn't been involved for the whole of the season, sort of managing the injury. And it's one way you can look at it that way as well.
I think if you analyse the season overall, then Timothy Castagna's form hasn't been to the level where it has been in the last few seasons, in my opinion. But as you say, Brendan stuck with him for whatever reason. So we can only sort of surmise what that reason is. But he's definitely the main man on that left-hand side, isn't he, Wilfried Zaha? And he needs taken care of. And he's gone with Timothy Castagna to fulfill that role.
Could it be the height, maybe, Jerry? The threat of Zaha, and he thinks Castagna may physically be able to deal with him a little bit better?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's playing on Brendan Rodgers' mind, is the height and set pieces. They've got good quality in the team, in Crystal Palace's team from the dead ball, and obviously with Leicester's record of conceding goals, it hasn't been that great this season, especially from set pieces again. So yeah, I think, as I said before, this game could hinge on one or two moments, and one of those moments could be from a set piece. So they've got to make sure that they shut up shop today.
When we look at the defensive line, at the same time, you've got Christensen who's come back in, Castagna goes back into the right back role, and then Wout Faes comes back in after probably Daniel Martins, one of his best showings as well. Solid generally, and then you think there's sort of three changes in the back line, as again with a novice keeper in terms of Everson. It was only his debut last time out. So again, when you look at it as a collective, there's quite a lot of changes from that Brentford game. As before, you're thinking that was reasonably solid. Brentford didn't offer too much, and then you look at today where the defence has got to be resilient, compact, communicate all together. And then when you do look at it, there's three changes amongst the back line, whether it's moving positions from the left back to right back. But again, that understanding, organisation, and when I look at it from afar, there's quite a few changes within that, which obviously you want your best players in the team, but as a defensive line, maybe that might be a thing because there hasn't been a clean sheet since the international break, but at the same time there has been a few changes there, and with Eze, I've noticed he's come into the team. That might be a threat, so you've got to get the communication right between the centre-back pairing and obviously who's in front with Wilfred Ndidi, who did a really good job against Brentford as well.
I think that's been an issue, Matty, in all honesty, throughout the season, has been the communication between the back line, between the back line and the midfield line as well. Castagna and Faes have obviously played the majority of the games. Christensen, when he was fit, started. And obviously Harry Souttar's just come into the side at the end of the January transfer window and played every game, I think. So I don't think that'll be too much of an issue, even though, like you say, it's 3 changes. Because they've played together somewhat, it shouldn't be too much of an issue getting back into the swing of things.
Well, let's hear from the man that's on the screen right now, Brendan Rodgers, the man who's made those decisions at the back, of course, today, has been asked in his press conference ahead of this game with Palace about being at the wrong end of the table.
Yeah, listen, it's different, but we haven't been consistently good enough this season to be anywhere else. So. But I've always said it's a great coaching challenge, and we've got 11 games now. We've got 33 points to play for, and we're all really focused on achieving what it is we want to do, and make sure we can climb away from safety as quickly as we can. From Saturday, the first, we've got till April the 1st, a real host of. We get 7 games, I think, in that period, which is going to be. Pivotal really for where we'll finish towards the season. So starting at the weekend, it's a big month for us of games, and we're ready to attack them.
Roy Hodgson's been around an awful long time. We perhaps have all got our own experience of encounters with him down the years. What about yours, and what sort of a team and challenge will he lay down for your team this weekend?
Yeah, no, listen, as I said earlier, it's over 1,200 games as a manager, or something like that, and managing other countries and international football and club football, and he's been a real inspiration for a lot of British coaches, and just his longevity and again the resilience and persistence needed to be a top manager. So now I've come across Roy's teams on many occasions, and they're always super organised. We'll all know their job. We'll all know what it is they have to do, and it's a difficult game for us. Whether it was Roy or Patrick, that's the reality of it. So, but it's certainly what Roy will bring to the team, and that'll be up to us to try and break that down.
Brendan, Wilfred Zaha, you think he scored 7 goals in 10 games against Leicester. What plans have you got for him?
Well, he's a very gifted player, of course, and like you say, there's certain players that have better records against teams than others. So no, he's one that you have to manage the 1v1. I think it's important that he's never left in a 1v1 duel, because he's highly gifted in that position. So you've always got to make sure that you can have good cover on the field. I think he's very good in counter-attacking situations as well. So you've always got to make sure that the spaces are blocked that stops him from counter-attacking. But they've also got other players that are talented players. So, but yeah, we'll go there with a strong mentality, and we know that they've got players that can hurt you. But I think they'll also know from playing ourselves that we get talented players as well.
It was fascinating hearing from Brendan Rodgers there about Roy Hodgson and about that matchup. It'll be a duel, a tactical duel in the dugout, as it always is when you face a Roy Hodgson side.
It will, I bet. At the same time, though, Roy Hodgson didn't think this was coming around the corner. How old is he now?
75.
75, so he must be the oldest Premier League manager. But obviously, Crystal Palace felt they needed a change. winless run and feel as if they're in a position where they had to do something about it. And obviously we've gone for a very experienced manager in Roy Hodgson, organised, knows the players. So he'll know what it's all about. But I think Palace have just been a little bit passive up until this point. It was going well last season under Patrick Vieira, and then you start the season well, but obviously the defeats that they've played some difficult teams, but a little bit passive, and then they might have felt we needed a change. I think they'll still be okay, hopefully after today's defeat. But moving forward, you think of the games, Palace I think will be okay, but as a football club they felt they needed a change, rightly or wrongly, but very experienced, defensive minded, and they've got players who show individual brilliance. Just they haven't been that clinical. Whether Roy Hodgson can get that out of them, but Palace felt they needed a change and decided to go with safe hands in Roy.
For Crystal Palace, Dan, is the fact Roy Hodgson coming in, it's easier to then try and play a more pragmatic defensive style of football than it is if you've gone from a defensive-minded team to have an attack-minded coach coming in and trying to change the whole setup of the squad. So that will play into their favour now. Whether or not the players at Crystal Palace loved what Patrick Vieira was doing or what Patrick Vieira was trying to do, but just weren't getting the results. And now Roy coming in and saying to the players, right, we're going to play this different style of football. It's a bit more defensive. Whether or not the players take to that, and whether or not, you know, that they're going to start listening to a 75-year-old, you know, coach a game. You know, some of the players might be a little bit off put with that.
Well, let's hear now from the man himself, Roy Hodgson, returning to the dugout for Crystal Palace after a couple of years away. He couldn't resist, could he? We'll hear from him and also Edmund Brack from the South London Press. A lot has changed at Selhurst Park since the clubs last met in the middle of October. Patrick Vieira's 20-month spell as manager ended just a couple of weeks ago, which means a second term in charge for veteran Roy Hodgson. The 75-year-old has been reflecting on his decision to return to the dugouts in South London.
It came as a big surprise, of course, but I've got to say it was a pleasant surprise in a way. One's never pleased to take over a job where someone's had to leave that job, so there's always that element that's not a great thing to have to come to terms with, but Steve Parish was very clear that, you know, this was going to happen and that he wanted me to come in for this period of time to take over the reins. And when he persuaded me that it was something that they really thought through and wanted to do, and they thought that I was the one that they wanted to do the job for this 2 months, it didn't take much thinking about at all, and as far as my wife was concerned, she didn't make too many complaints either. Perhaps she was glad to see the back of me, I don't know.
It was quite clear that perhaps the methods that worked so well in Vieira's first season in charge weren't working in the second, and that he was perhaps losing the players a little bit in that respect. In terms of bringing back Roy Hodgson, I guess people are surprised because of the age and because of the fact the club made such an effort to move away from that when Vieira first came in. But looking at it rationally, with 10 games left of the Premier League season, when you need the team to gel, to hit the ground running and to find some form, bringing in a man with such experience, who knows half the squad, who knows how the club's run, who knows where everything is in the training ground and can immediately get the best out of the likes of Eberechi Eze, Wilfried Zaha, players who he's worked with, especially Wilf, in terms of years. It just made sense, and I think it's a really good call from the club with such limited time left of the Premier League season.
Palace's 22 goals scored is the joint lowest of anyone in the Premier League this season, summed up by the fact that Wilfried Zaha, who has missed a portion of the season through injury, is their top scorer with 6 goals.
The key man over the past 10 years has been Wilfried Zaha, and I expect him to be the key man once again if Palace are to retain their Premier League status for an 11th season in a row. You know, he's coming into the end of his contract. This might be his final 10 games as a Crystal Palace player. Who knows what's going to happen? And similar in the terms of the fairy tale with Roy Hodgson. If Palace are to stay up, the fairy tale of Wilfried Zaha could be a massive part of it as well.
He's clearly the danger man, isn't he? Wilfried Zaha coming up against, we think Timothy Castagna, who is right back for the Foxes today. A couple of changes at the back. Victor Christiansen is left back, Wout Faes returns in central defence. The key for that defence, Jerry, is obviously the threat of Wilfried Zaha.
Yeah, it goes without saying. I've watched Palace over the years against Leicester, and he's been, a thorn in Leicester's side. His stats have just been mentioned. He's also a player that likes to go to ground a lot. And that's something that, Timothy Castagna has to be very, very aware of this afternoon. That, if he tries to make a rash challenge, let's say, then invariably Zaha will go to ground. And invariably, when he goes to ground, they're in decent positions where Crystal Palace can get bodies into the box from those set pieces. But yeah, he's just got that ability, hasn't he? He's got pace off the mark, ability. Okay, his goal scoring record this season has been great, but he is one of those players that can just create something out of nothing.
He's brilliant, isn't he? In a 1v1 situation, he can either go on the outside, he can cut in, and as Jerry mentioned, he can buy free kicks, penalties. Sometimes he does go to ground easily, but at the same time, if you coax a defender into making that challenge, he's got the ability to just ease it away and then buy that free kick or buy that penalty. But it was interesting going back to what Brendan Rodgers was saying about Zaha being a real threat and that doubling up. So it's got a really important from Leicester perspective. Castagna and Tete, can they work together? Obviously, we want to see Tete doing more of what Zaha does, but first and foremost, you've got to get it right in terms of defensively, reduce that space, distances between the units, and prevent Zaha getting a 1v1 opportunity, because that's no defender wants to face Zaha in a 1v1 and expose that. So it's really important. Can Tete get back in to deny that as well, but also show his own threats going forward, because we want to see what he's about. Other than the Villa game, he hasn't really threatened too much, but first and foremost, you've got to stop Zaha because he's Palace's main man.
Again, it's a big point Brendan Rodgers came out with in his interview. Who is going to be the guy that doubles up on him is the big question for me. We know with Tete, again, not one of the strongest points of his game is getting back and helping out. Is he going to drag one of the midfielders, i.e. a Wilfried Ndidi, to go across, and engage and help Timothy Castagna out? Or is it going to be one of the centre halves? So, it's a big question mark for me, that doubling up on Wilfried Zaha, if that is the tactic he's going to use today.
On that though, Jerry, they might even go more front-footed. It would be a surprise having the Brentford game, but when you think about it, Tete in there, are Leicester more going to attack in terms of Barnes, Tete, Daka, Maddison, and go the opposite and think Palace will sit in, be organised, and they might go against the counter and actually let Leicester have the ball? I'd be surprised, but
it's just what happens on the counter then, Matty, and because again, like Tete, Zaha isn't going to necessarily track back for 90 minutes. He's going to be that option on that left-hand side when Palace win the ball. And that's when he's at his most dangerous, when he has a bit of time and space to receive it, get faced up with defenders and start running at them. So yeah, it's going to be a tactical battle, that's for sure.
We're around about 20 minutes now away from kick-off down at Selhurst Park. We've got another Matchday Live coming for you, though, tomorrow afternoon, because LCFC women are in action here at King Power Stadium. They face Reading in a massive game for LCFC women as they're looking to stave off relegation. They're bottom of the table, but a couple of good results may just do the trick. They had a fantastic result when they played here earlier in the season This was against Brighton, a fantastic 3-0 win that day, so we'll be hoping for a repeat of that tomorrow. You can follow all the action with us on Matchday Live. We'll be live from 2:30, so do join us on LCFC TV and YouTube. We've got plenty of interviews and loads of insightful build-up here from King Power Stadium ahead of that one. Let's take a trip down, though, to London and concentrate again on this afternoon's game. Matt Elliott has made another trip down to the capital. How was your journey, Matt?
Yeah, usual plod down south. Went the scenic route in terms of right through the heart of London. So saw some of the landmarks of the capital, which broke the journey up a little bit, but eventually found my way into a massive bowl of lasagna, which was very pleasing. Double bubble. They don't give you voucher tickets here, so you can go up twice. It was beautiful. That satisfied me, and I hope I'm satisfied in a couple of hours' time as well. But atmosphere is pretty lively here, as you imagine, in Crystal Palace, here at Selhurst Park.
Better memories, Matt, having a lasagna than when you got dragged at half-time against Palace at Selhurst Park.
Very true. I'm creating happy memories so far today, but not always the case. I mean, mixed fortunes at this ground. I made my professional debut actually here for Charlton Athletic way back many moons ago against the mighty Chesterfield, and then I scored 2 goals in the first half for Leicester against Wimbledon, who were ground sharing with Palace at the time. But yeah, my most vivid memory is getting the hook after having an absolute stinker at half-time by Martin O'Neill, who said, "Maddie, I paid £1.6 million for you. On that evidence, I wouldn't pay £1.60, and promptly threw me in the shower."
You're not the only one who's had a bit of a nightmare there, Matt, as well. I've been dragged off, sent off, almost ended up on goal, if you remember, as well, which thankfully Theo Sagaragas, who's only 5'7", he took the gloves off me in a cup game. But yeah, it's a bit of a roller coaster ground to go and play at.
We've all got it in common. We all got dragged at half time at Palace. It happened to me. I remember first game of the season. We just weren't ready, and we're 3-0 down. So hopefully not the same again. But we all seem to be dragged at Palace at some point.
Well, hopefully that changes today, Matt. It's a vital game, isn't it? Of course, every game now is vital.
Yeah, and you get that feel, you sense it, being in and around the ground here now. You probably hear the music being cranked up, the atmosphere is being developed, but the intensity of the game that lays ahead, the importance of it is becoming sort of minute by minute more relevant, more pressurised, if you like. I think it's been highlighted quite a lot this week, hasn't it, this game? Obviously you got the Man City-Liverpool game, which has just finished, but after that, this is the fixture that a lot of people are looking at, saying, what a game it is, because Crystal Palace, despite their position in the league, are looking relatively healthy. When you look at the actual situation overall, we know how tight it is. One adverse result can really affect you. On the flip side of that, a positive one shoots you up the league, certainly in Leicester's case. But yeah, hell of a lot to play for here, although I do think when all is said and done, I think both sides will be safe enough come the end of the season.
You're watching the warm-up, Martin?
I am, mate, yeah.
What's the body language like from the players? Because I always like to have a look at the players warming up and see what the body language is like.
Yeah. Sometimes you can read bits into that text, can't you? But to be honest, it's the Palace players who are right in front of me, literally about 30 yards away. The view's not the best at this stadium, as you may well know. But Crystal Palace, I hesitate to say, are firing balls in the back of the net, left, right and centre. Eze, Olise and Zaha in particular. But Leicester just finishing their warm-up now. They looked robust enough. They looked like the chest being puffed out a little bit. And hopefully that's a sign of things to come. They look ready for action.
Thank you very much, Matt. We'll let you go back for one more round of lasagna before we hear from you just before kick-off. It's, as Matt's saying, it's vital today. Getting James Maddison on the ball, as we've been saying earlier, is going to be key.
It is, and touching on obviously what the boys have said before, the start's imperative because Palace fans will be up for it, especially the situation they find themselves in. Roy's back in. He'll want to do well. The players will want to react to that. It's always I always found it a hostile place to play, but the noise will be all there, and it's just, can James Maddison find them areas? Yes, it isn't all about one player, but at the same time, can he identify them spaces, get turned, threaten, get shots away, and take that confidence from international performances and what he's shown for Leicester throughout the course of the season into today, and be vital in terms of, can he be effective and can he produce at the key moments?
Yeah, for me, Dan, I think the most important thing is, can Leicester keep a clean sheet? Can they get into half-time with a clean sheet? Because then that gives them something really positive to build on, especially, you know, playing away from home. This is a tense game. Both teams need points ASAP. And so for Leicester, it's about going away from home and being solid. And if they can get into half-time with a clean sheet, then fingers crossed, you know, that the second half will look a little bit brighter.
One thing we haven't mentioned, Jerry, actually, speaking of clean sheets, is the goalkeeping position. Daniel Everson in again as he was against Brentford. Yeah,
I thought it was a decent league debut for Daniel Everson, I have to say. You know, when he had an opportunity to come out and take his crosses, he did that. He looked assured. He's obviously got, you know, a lot of work to do to become a top-class keeper. But he has to start somewhere. And I thought, you know, the way he was, you know, he was brought into the team against Brentford. He handled that really well.
It's always difficult as well, being obviously a relatively young or a new keeper into it, and he did generally look reassured in his performance. Nothing that was too dramatic, just did the job. And again, it'll be a big game for him this afternoon in terms of backlines changed slightly, so it's, as Jerry said earlier, the communication between him and his defensive unit, Wilfred Ndidi in front, can they block the gaps? And it'll be a big game again, and a different atmosphere, because it's pretty much more like championship footballs in terms of the ground. It is one of them where you feel the fans are on top of you.
Which is used to that, of course.
Which is used to that. And obviously Palace offer a bit of physicality, so they'll be a threat, and they'll know Leicester are vulnerable at set plays. So again, a key area, can that be solid and backed upon it in terms of debut? Deserves to be starting again, but a big game.
Final point, Jerry, I'll let it go to you. How important is the opening exchanges? You said clean sheet at half-time, even less than that, 20 minutes into this game, they've got to be really tight.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I think, you know, sometimes you've got to realise where you are, i.e. league position, and where you are, as in right now. You're going to a hostile environment against a team who are in desperate need of points. Have got a new manager in. So you have to concentrate, or you have to prioritise certain factors in a game like this. And for me, being defensively solid is the most important. We know that James Maddison can get on the ball and create stuff, and same with Barnes and Dewsbury Hall. But for me, the starting point has to be stay solid, and hopefully that will get you through to half-time.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Thanks to Matty Fryer, of course, for their build-up. You can hear us again at half-time, and then again for half an hour at full-time, when hopefully we'll be talking about a Leicester City victory. Palace haven't won yet in 2023. Let's hope that run continues. The team that will be taking you through it down at Selhurst Park is Matt Elliott and Niall McCall. They'll be with you after this short break.
Because memories never fade, no matter how long. We'll still remember the moments of excitement and the impressions of Thailand. Amazing Thailand, now even more amazing.
Lên như trùng secondes.
Le Miette is the belief that perfection lies within the details, where the finest ingredients deserve the finest craftsmanship. In every pursuit of perfection, there is passion and perseverance, where attention to detail inspires a masterpiece that's balanced and in harmony. This is the Le Miette philosophy, brewed into every drop of Chang beer. This is the taste of Thai perfection. Chang beer. We brew friendship.
Leicester City against Crystal Palace. This is a huge, huge football match in the Premier League. Both sides looking to preserve their status in the division. There may only be 5 places between them, but the gap is just 2 points. Leicester 1 place and 1 point above the relegation zone. But victory here against the side also struggling, and that really does ease the pressure for Brendan Rodgers and those Foxes players. But no doubt about it, Selhurst Park is going to be bouncing this afternoon as Roy Hodgson returns to try and save Crystal Palace from the drop back to the Championship. Hopefully, as far as Leicester City are concerned, that does not mean that Crystal Palace get the result that they are chasing. Alongside me in the commentary box for this one for LCFC Radio, a man who, as we've just been hearing, made his debut at Selhurst Park, scored at Selhurst Park, has been hooked at half-time at Selhurst Park and eaten all of the lasagna inside Selhurst Park as well. You can add it to that list. Matty, this feels like a massive game, doesn't it?
Yeah, and hopefully this afternoon's entertainment will be as varied and as exciting as my times here at Selhurst Park, all condensed in one game, as long as it comes out with a positive result for Leicester, of course. But I fear it's most likely not going to be the case in terms of the entertainment factor. It's a nervous time of the year. Both teams short on confidence to a level, not playing free-flowing football, known for their doggedness, the home team. Haven't scored 2 goals since their last win prior to the World Cup, so there's something to be looked at. So the omens are not good for the entertainment stakes, but all to play for, that's for sure.
Does that really matter though if you're a Leicester City fan in the away end today, Matt? I guess you don't care if it's scrappy, you don't care if it's not entertaining, you just want to win. You have to win. That will be the feeling amongst not just the supporters but everyone involved with Leicester City today.
Yeah, of course, 100%. It's irrelevant, you know, the prettiness factor of the game and the performance. It's all about the result. People say at this stage of the season, I mean, it's always all about the result, really, isn't it? You know, you can keep churning out mediocre performances, but get the right outcome. People will settle for that, but it's a fine line, isn't it? It's a fine line. But yes, things are so balanced, finely balanced at the moment. You're literally going into this game, you think it's going to be tight, but you haven't got a clue which way it's going to sway, to be honest.
Well, the sun is actually shining here in South London. The weather hasn't been great south of the East Midlands over the last 3 or 4 days. It feels like the rain has been torrential down here in the south, and it's been non-stop, but the clouds have parted, the sun has come out, and the scene is set here in this traditional old stadium for a huge game at the bottom of the Premier League table. Leicester City will feel that they shouldn't be at the bottom, such is the quality of the squad and the quality of the players that Brendan Rodgers has at his disposal. But how much of this game today, Matt, will be about bottle, not just about quality, but also about how you deal with the pressure, because there will be pressure here this afternoon.
Yeah, there is, and I think before the game, I think most players will be all right. I think it's when things go adversely within the game, and then you see how they react. It's a pressurised situation, you're right, but that pressure can be alleviated pretty quickly with 2 positive performances and results on the trot back to back. And you'll look, certainly when you look at the table, you'll look clear of any immediate danger. So you've got that positivity to motivate you, inspire you if you want. And most of these players have played under pressurised situations at one level or another.
It's what you live for as a professional, isn't it? You want to play in these sorts of games.
Yeah, no, exactly. You know, you should thrive on this sort of atmosphere. But it's when it's such a fine line, and then listen, you make a mistake, you go 1-0 down, and all of a sudden that's the real test of character. Because before that, you're thinking, we'll probably be all right. We'll probably be all right because when we look good in training, we look an attractive side. It works into a different kettle of fish out here once the whistle goes. But yeah, it's reacting. That's a sign of character for me. And like Leicester showed last week, to be fair, against Brentford. And if they can repeat that sort of performance, I think they'll get something out of the game.
Roy Hodgson is back in the Crystal Palace dugout. How much of a factor will that be? He won't be needing to shake too many players' hands and say, I've not met you before, because he only left 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't even seem that long, to be honest, does it? Certainly not from my eyes, but not too much has changed. You know, there's obviously a few personnel, but a lot of the members that were, there's 2 of them now just walking in front of us, MacArthur and Milivojevic, you know, were mainstays of the team. They're on the bench, they're still around, still similar personnel. I think we know what to expect. It's just probably going to make them even more structured than they were, which is, I don't know, some people might think, is that what Palace need? Because what they need is more goals, and I'm not sure Roy Hodgson is going to bring that.
Leicester City are in a fight to preserve their Premier League status. 17th in the table, just a place and just a point above the relegation zone. Fight, desire, hunger, passion, all of those attributes required this afternoon in a huge game for the Foxes. But it goes without saying, Crystal Palace will need to display those qualities today also. They too are looking over their shoulders. There may be 5 places between the 2 clubs in the standings, but the gap is only 2 points. No win this calendar year for Crystal Palace. That's prompted a change in management at Selhurst Park. Patrick Vieira's sacked, so it's out with the old and in with the old. 75-year-old former boss Roy Hodgson is back in the Eagles dugout, and this his first game since returning to South London. It's a clash of a side who struggled to keep clean sheets in Leicester City against a side that struggled to score goals in Crystal Palace. But you just feel as we approach the running, something has got to give. Hodgson's first team selection since returning to Selhurst Park sees 3 changes from the Eagles' loss at league leaders Arsenal before the international break. Goalkeeper Bethente Guaita's back in the side after returning to fitness. So too is Joachim Andersen, who missed the Arsenal game also. The lively Ebere Eze will operate from the right behind the dangerous Michael Olise. But as is often the case, Wilfried Zaha will be where most eyes will be from a Palace perspective. 7 goals in his last 10 games against Leicester City. For the Foxes, Brendan Rodgers has made 2 changes from the Brentford game, both at the back, as Wout Faes returns from suspension to partner Harry Souttar, who was sent back to Seagrave early during the international break by Australia, but only as a precaution. Thankfully, he's pulled through. So too is Victor Christiansen, who has missed the last 3 games, but is in today. Aside from that, it's as you were from the Brentford game. Daniel Everson in goal, the back 4 of Christiansen, Faes, Souttar and Castagna, Dewsbury Hall and Ndidi in the midfield. In front of them, Barnes, Maddison and Tete, and leading the line is Patson Daka. Your Foxes substitutes this afternoon are Danny Ward, Shala Soyuncu, Luke Thomas, Daniel Amate, Papi Mendy, Buba Sumare, Ricardo, Jamie Vardy and Kelechi Iheanacho. Well, Crystal Palace chairman Steve Parish has called for as much backing as possible from the Selhurst Park faithful. We've already discussed this, Matt Elliott, but it feels like a huge game this afternoon, and the players will be under no illusion that it certainly is that.
No, there won't be at all, and hopefully that's the way they're treating it, because it is a huge game for both sides. Probably particularly more so Leicester. If Leicester were to come unstuck here today, and they could end up in the relegation slots, and then the pressure really cranks up and such, and then it is a test and all sorts of different problems to face. So Yeah, big game, big game. Like I said, ultimately I think both sides will be all right, but there's some real tough work to be done in the short term.
Well, Leicester City will be wearing their white and gold strip this afternoon on the road in South London. Crystal Palace in their familiar home colours of the red and blue stripes with blue shorts and blue socks. And you just get that hush and calmness before kick-off in a big game, that anticipation, that nervousness. And as I mentioned in his programme notes today, the Crystal Palace chairman, Steve Parish, has called upon those Eagles fans to really get behind their side as they look to try and stay up. And how important is it that Leicester City get at Crystal Palace early in this game, Matty, to make sure that the crowd don't get too buoyant and don't get too confident?
Yeah, there is that. They're going to have to cope with Palace's opening surge, you would imagine, first and foremost. If they can take them the other way, then even better. But they've got to show intent. One, to sort of suppress Crystal Palace, but also to give themselves a boost, know that they're capable.
Away we go then. Leicester City against Crystal